When I saw the empty garage, I thought the worst thing was that my son had stolen his late father's car. I was wrong. The worst part was the phone call I got the next morning. The call from the man who'd bought it. The one who told me why my husband had hidden an investigation file inside the dashboard. The garage door was open. That's what I noticed first. Standing in my kitchen, my morning coffee going cold in my hands, I stared through the window above the sink. A dark space, gaping open even in the morning light. Dennis never left it open. 43 years of marriage, 43 years of watching him close that door every single night. He never forgot, not once. But Dennis was gone. 8 months now. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the weather. I set the coffee mug down. The clack of ceramic on the granite countertop sounded too loud in the quiet kitchen. I walked to the back door, the metal knob cold against my palm. I stepped outside. The spring air should have felt fresh, but I couldn't seem to breathe. The lawn needed mowing. I kept meaning to call someone. I crossed the yard, my slippers dragging on the cold concrete. The smell. That's the second thing I noticed. I should have smelled motor oil, old leather, a hint of the orange hand soap he always used, but there was nothing. Just dust and damp concrete. I stood at the threshold. The familiar oil stain was still there, a dark shadow on the floor, a 20-year ghost, but the car was gone. Just empty. My chest tightened. I put a hand on the door frame, trying to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 43 years as an ICU nurse, and I was still using the techniques I taught patients. Breathe, think, act. But I couldn't think past the empty space. The workbench along the back wall was exactly as Dennis had left it. His wrenches hung in perfect order on the pegboard, each one outlined in black marker so he'd know exactly where it went. His red toolbox sat closed. And his work journal was open. I walked toward it, my fingers trembling as I traced the worn leather cover. I picked it up. His handwriting looked tired on the last few pages, the letters looser than usual. The last entry he wrote, almost done. 20 years on this beauty. Replaced the last carburetor. Can't wait to teach Carol to drive her. Our retirement road trip starts next summer. The trip we would never take. I placed the journal back in its exact spot. I could see him here, almost hear the classic rock he played on that old radio. He'd sing along when he thought I wasn't listening. The sound of an engine on the gravel outside pulled me from the memory. A gleaming black BMW pulled into the driveway. Leased, not bought. Brian had told me that at Christmas, like I was supposed to be impressed. My son, Brian, 38 years old, got out of the driver's side. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Even from across the yard, I could see it. The way his shoulders hunched, the way he shoved his hands deep into his pockets. The passenger door opened. Vanessa stepped out, perfect, as always. Dark, smooth hair, designer sunglasses hiding her face. She stood by the car, watching me standing in the garage. Even through the glasses, I could feel her staring. Brian walked toward me, stopping at the edge of the garage. "Mom?" he called. I waited. The silence stretched. I need to talk to you about something." I didn't wait. My voice was dry. "Where is the car, Brian?" His jaw tightened. "That's what I need to talk about." "The car," I repeated. "Where is it?" "I sold it." The words landed, but my brain took a second to translate them. Sold? You what? "I sold it yesterday. You were at the store. I needed the money." He looked at the empty space, then at the ground. Vanessa's been planning this Paris trip for months. It's important for her business connections. I couldn't let her down. The tightness in my chest spread. My hands were shaking so badly I had to cross my arms. That was your father's car. It was just sitting there. His voice went defensive, hard. Dad's gone, Mom. You don't even drive it. Gone. Past tense. Brian finally looked up. His eyes were red around the edges. I got a good price, $15,000. That's fair for a car that old. $15,000 for 20 years of Dennis's weekends? For a car he promised would stay in the family? I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my son and shake him until he understood what he'd done. But then another cold thought hit me. Your key still worked. But what about the title? A flicker of panic crossed his face, just for a second. I turned and ran back to the house, ignoring him calling after me. I went straight to Dennis's office, the metal filing cabinet. Top drawer, the file labeled Shelby. I ripped it open. It was empty. The official certificate of title, it was gone. I walked back to the garage, the empty folder in my hand. Brian, I said, my voice no longer shaking. It was ice. You stole the title. You forged my name. His face went pale. Mom, Vanessa stepped forward, placing her hand on Brian's arm, a possessive gesture. Her nails were perfectly red. Carol, she said, her voice soft, but with no warmth. We're not discussing this. It's done. The car is sold. We leave for Paris tomorrow. I stared at her. This is between me and my son. I'm his wife, she smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What's between you and him is between all of us. Brian needed the money. The car was sitting unused. It was the logical thing to sell. It was his father's. His father is dead, Vanessa said flatly, stating it like a fact. And Brian is trying to build a life. We both are. Surely you can understand that. I didn't trust myself to speak without screaming. I just looked at Brian, pleading with him to say something, anything. But he looked at the ground again. We'll send you photos from Paris, Vanessa said. You'd love it there. The architecture, the museums, so romantic. The casual cruelty of that comment. Maybe it was intentional. We should go, Brian mumbled. They walked back to the BMW. Vanessa rolled down the window as they backed out. Take care of yourself, Carol. We'll see you when we get back. The car disappeared around the corner. I stood alone in the empty garage. The smell of motor oil and betrayal hung in the air, clinging to me like a shroud. I didn't sleep. The night was a long, dark blur, spent at the kitchen table with Dennis's open journal under my hands. I read the same page over and over, the one where he documented replacing the carburetor, his handwriting so careful, his measurements exact. The house was silent, but my mind was screaming. At 7 a.m., the phone rang. The sound sliced through the silence, making me jump. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mrs. Bennett? A man's voice, rough like he'd been up all night. This is Tom Graves from Graves Classic Auto. My heart hammered against my ribs. Yes. Ma'am, I have your husband's car, the Shelby. I gripped the edge of the table. My son, he sold it to you. He did. He brought it in Wednesday. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. Mrs. Bennett, I need you to come to the dealership, right now if you can. Why? What is it? Dennis was my friend, he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. A good friend. There's something in the car, something he wanted you to know, something he made me promise. My mind couldn't make sense of the words. I remember you now. From the funeral, you were standing in the back. He sighed. I was. I should have spoken to you then, but I couldn't. Please, can you come? He gave me the address, an industrial area on the east side of town. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I got dressed, my hands fumbling with the buttons on my shirt. I found my keys and drove, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The morning traffic felt surreal, like I was watching it through a tunnel. I passed the hospital where I'd worked for 43 years, the parking lot already filling up. It looked like a building on another planet. What could Dennis have hidden, and why would he make this man, Tom, promise to show me? My mind raced, imagining dozen scenarios: undiscovered rust, a mechanical flaw, maybe even a hidden stash of cash, but none of it felt right, not with the urgency in Tom's voice. Graves Classic Auto was at the end of a long street of warehouses. It was clean, modern. Rows of vintage cars sat gleaming behind a chain-link fence. A man stood by the front door, watching for me, gray hair, maybe 65, in jeans and a button-down shirt. I parked and got out. He walked toward me, and I saw his eyes were red. Mrs. Bennett, thank you for coming. You're Tom. Yes, ma'am. He put out his hand. His grip was firm, but his hand was shaking. Your husband, Dennis, saved my life 25 years ago. I waited. He looked at the ground, took a breath. I needed a business loan, had a dream of opening this place. I was a decent mechanic, but I had bad credit, no collateral, just nerve. No bank would touch me. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. Dennis was a customer at the old shop I worked at. He barely knew me, but he co-signed the loan. He risked his own savings, his own credit, for a guy he barely knew. He never told me. He wouldn't have. That's who he was. I paid back every penny, but the debt was deeper than money. This dealership exists because of him. He wiped his eye. When your son brought that Shelby in on Wednesday, I knew it, the second I saw it. Dennis talked about that car every time I saw him. He was so proud of it. Tom's voice got rough. Your son had no idea what he was selling. He said $15,000 sounded fair. My stomach dropped. What is it really worth, Tom? Tom held my gaze. In its current condition, museum quality restoration, around $180,000. It's a documented 1967 Shelby GT500, one of the rarest. $180,000. The number hung in the air. I felt dizzy. I sat down hard on the concrete curb, just sat. Tom sat down next to me, not too close, just sharing the silence. I bought it from him, Tom said finally. Paid him the $15,000. He was desperate. Said something about Paris. He shook his head. But Mrs. Bennett, that car was never mine to keep. It was always yours. Why are you telling me this? Because of the promise. Tom stood, holding out his hand to help me up. Come inside. There's something you need to see. He led me through the pristine showroom into the service bay. It was huge and bright, with white floors. 3 cars sat under covers. Tom stopped at the last one and pulled the cover back. There it was. The burgundy paint was so deep it looked wet. The chrome shone under the bright lights. I walked toward it slowly, as if approaching a sleeping animal. I put my hand on the hood. The metal was cool and smooth. I could feel Dennis in it, every line. I opened the driver's door and sat down. It smelled like home. Motor oil, old leather, and that orange sock. The steering wheel was worn smooth where his hands had gripped it. 2 years ago, Tom said, leaning against the doorframe, Dennis came to me. He asked me to help him install something. A hidden compartment. I looked up. Why? He said if anything ever happened to him, anything, I needed to make sure you got the car, that I made sure you knew about this. Tom gestured to the dashboard behind the original radio. He made me swear. He said, "This is for Carol, Tom. Only for Carol." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He didn't look inside, Tom said. He showed me how to release the panel. Press here, pull there. The radio face came away, revealing a dark space behind it. Tom stepped back. "I'll be in my office. Take all the time you need." He walked out, leaving me alone with the car and its secret. My hand was shaking. I reached into the compartment. My fingers touched paper. I pulled out a thick manila folder. Under it was a sealed envelope, my name written on the front in Dennis's familiar, careful script. And at the bottom, a small, heavy key. I opened the envelope first. "My dearest Carol, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means something has happened with the car. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you while I was alive. You would have wanted to handle it together, I know that. But I needed to protect you from this until I had proof. I've been investigating Vanessa for the last 18 months. The words blurred. I read them again. Investigating Vanessa. She is not who she says she is. The woman Brian married, her real name, the one she used before, is Vanessa Cortland. She's done this before, Carol. Twice that I've found so far. In this folder is everything I've gathered. Photos, documents, contact information for her previous victims. Their stories are all the same. She targets men with aging parents and family assets. She's going to target our house, Carol. That's her pattern. She'll convince Brian that you're declining, that you need care, that the house should be sold. Then she'll disappear with the money. I confronted her once, carefully. She's good, very good. Brian doesn't see it. He's so in love he won't believe me without ironclad proof, and I don't have it yet. The key in this box is for our safe deposit box at First National, box 447. Inside are some stock certificates I bought in 1994 as a favor to a patient. I found them last month. Check the current value. You're taken care of, my love, no matter what. Tom knows to call you if anything happens to this car. He's a good man. Trust him. Protect yourself, and please protect our son. He's a victim in this too. I love you. I'm still protecting you. Dennis. I sat there frozen in the leather seat, the letter shaking in my grip. 8 months of grieving him. 8 months of thinking I knew everything about our life. And all that time, he had been carrying this terrible, lonely secret. He had spent his last months not just fighting his illness, but fighting to protect us. My grief, which had been a dull, constant ache, turned into something new, something sharp and hot and focused. It was rage. I don't know how long I sat there, just breathing in the smell of leather and motor oil, the letter clutched in my fist. Tom came back, standing quietly in the doorway. He didn't say anything, just held out a bottle of water. I took it, my hand still shaking. "He was protecting me," I whispered. "Even now." "That's who Dennis was," Tom said. I looked down at the thick manila folder on my lap. It felt heavier than a tombstone. I need to see what's in here. I need to call these men. My office, he said, just pointing. Take all the time you need. I sat behind Tom's desk, the door closed. I opened the folder. The first things I saw were photos. Vanessa, smiling, on the arm of an older, gray-haired man. A wedding photo. Another photo, different wedding, different man. Then the documents, copies of marriage certificates. Vanessa Cortland married Stanley Wright, Phoenix, Arizona, June 2019. Vanessa Cortland married George Murphy, Tampa, Florida, March 2021. Newspaper clippings, printed from online archives. Local man reports elderly mother's life savings stolen by daughter-in-law. Family business sold and suspected fraud case. New wife vanishes. And then Dennis's notes. Pages and pages of his small, careful handwriting. Feb 10, V asked where we keep the house deed. Said she was curious about property lines. March 4, V mentioned my health 3 times. Asked Brian if I seemed forgetful. March 20, V left a brochure for Sunset Hills Senior Living on the kitchen counter. Claimed it fell out of her purse. He'd been documenting everything, every subtle poison she'd dripped into our lives. At the back, he'd written the contact information. Stanley Wright, Phoenix. George Murphy, Tampa. I dialed the first number. Stanley Wright answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was tired, hollow. Hello? Mr. Wright? My name is Carol Bennett. I'm calling because my son is married to a woman named Vanessa Cortland. A long, heavy silence on the other end, then a deep, shuddering sigh. I've been wondering when this call would come. I gripped the edge of the desk. Can you tell me what happened? Stanley was 58. He met Vanessa in the spring of 2019, volunteering at a community center where his mother, Alice, also volunteered. His wife had died. He was lonely. Vanessa was charming, attentive, and deeply worried about Alice. She started small. Stanley's voice cracked. Your mother seems to be slowing down, Stan. She forgot my name yesterday. I'm just worried about her being alone. Over months, she built a case. She found articles about dementia. She'd discover Alice had left the stove on. She found a top-of-the-line memory care facility. She deserves the best, Stan. $20,000 a month. The only way to afford it was to sell his mother's house, the house she'd lived in for 42 years. It sold for $280,000. The money went into a joint account with Vanessa. 2 weeks after Alice moved into the facility, Vanessa disappeared. She cleaned out the account, every penny. My mom was fine, Mrs. Bennett, Stanley sobbed into the phone. A little forgetful maybe, but she was fine. She didn't need that place. She needed her home. She died 6 months later in that facility, asking me when she could go home. My eyes burned. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice hardening. Stop her. Whatever she's telling your son about you, don't believe it. Document everything. Please, don't let her do this to another family. I hung up, my stomach churning. I drank the water Tom left, and I dialed the second number. George Murphy's story was different, but the pattern was the same. He was 61. He met Vanessa at his father's funeral. She was there, supporting a friend. She understood his grief. She helped him through the darkest time. They were married 8 months later. His father had owned a small auto repair shop for 40 years. He inherited it, but was too grief-stricken to run it. Vanessa's suggestion, sell it, honey. It's too much stress. We'll take the money, travel, and heal together. It sold for $195,000. The money went into a joint account. 3 days after the check cleared, Vanessa was gone. She researches you, George said, his voice flat and dead. She targets men with aging parents and family assets. She knows every weakness before she even says hello. Does your son have access to your house, your finances?
Not yet, I said. Then you have time. Stop her before she gets him to sign anything. I hung up and sat in the silence of Tom's office. Tom came in. Dennis suspected all of this. He pulled a business card from his desk. He told me he'd hired an old buddy, a private investigator, Peter Coleman. He told me to give you this if you ever showed up. Peter Coleman, Private Investigations, a local number. First, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, I need to go to the bank. I drove to First National, Dennis's investigation file on the passenger seat. The small, heavy key was in my purse. The bank manager led me to the vault. Box 447. The key fit. Inside was a single envelope. I opened it. Stock certificates. And another letter from Dennis. Carol, I bought this stock as a favor to a patient back in '94. His son was starting a tech company. I gave him $5,000. Honestly, I forgot all about it. I found these certificates last month while organizing our files. I looked up the company and nearly fell over. This is for you, for our future, for your security. If you're reading this, it means you need it. Live well, my love. Travel. Stay independent. Don't let anyone, not even Brian, convince you otherwise. You are taken care of. Dennis. I took the certificates to the bank manager. Can you tell me what these are worth? She typed for a few minutes. Her eyes widened. She looked at me, then back at the screen. Mrs. Bennett, TechCore Solutions went public last year. These shares, they are currently valued at approximately $342,000. I sat down. Just sat. $342,000. This wasn't just money. It was power. It was independence. It was the resources to fight a war. Dennis had left me an arsenal.
Peter opened his folder. She's been active. I've been tracking her digital footprint. She's on caregiver forums under a fake name, asking how to convince resistant elderly they need help. She's been browsing real estate in Costa Rica. He slid a credit report across the table. She's also opened 3 credit cards in Brian's name, without his knowledge. He's currently $32,000 in debt. She's funding their lifestyle. He then dropped the final bomb. And Vanessa Cortland is a stolen identity. The real Vanessa Cortland died in a car accident in 2018. This woman's real name is Linda Marsh. She's wanted for fraud in 2 other states. My blood ran cold. Can the police stop her? Not yet. Not here. She hasn't committed a crime in this state. The previous scams were in Arizona and Florida. Until she actually takes money or forges your name on that house, the police can't act. So we wait for her to hurt us. No, Peter said, leaning forward. We build the case. We document everything. And when she makes her move, we're ready. He looked at me. And Brian? Brian has to see the truth for himself. If you just tell him, she'll convince him you're paranoid and drive a wedge between you. He has to be the one to discover it. I understood. I drove home. I walked through my house, the house Dennis and I built. This wasn't just my home anymore. It was a battlefield. Vanessa, Linda, was in phase 1. When she got back from Paris, she would start phase 2. But I'd be ready. I had the money, I had the evidence, and I had the allies. The hunt was on. They came back from Paris 2 weeks later on a Tuesday. I invited them for dinner. I played the part of the welcoming mother, the one who was ready to forgive. I made pot roast, Dennis's favorite, Brian's too. They arrived at 6, both tanned. Brian looked tired despite the vacation, with new stress lines around his eyes. Vanessa, however, was glowing. She wore clothes I'd never seen before, a silk blouse, designer jeans, and a new, expensive-looking bag. I hugged Brian at the door. He held on a second longer than usual, a silent, desperate grip. Vanessa's hug was quick, performative, all air and perfume. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd raised Brian, the same chairs Dennis had refinished 20 years ago. Vanessa controlled the conversation from the first minute. Paris was beautiful. The hotel in Les Marais was stunning. They had lunch near the Louvre, dinner at a restaurant I couldn't pronounce. She painted a picture of a life they deserved, a life they should have. "It was wonderful, Carol," she said, sipping her wine, "but it just made me realize how much we're missing out on. Brian works so hard and we have so little to show for it." She looked right at me when she said it. The meaning was clear. You are what's holding him back. I kept my face neutral. "Pass the potatoes, please." Brian jumped in, as if on cue. "Mom, you should think about traveling too, seeing things. Maybe someday." Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dropping into that familiar, syrupy tone of concern. "Carol, this house is really too big for just one person. Have you thought about downsizing? Maybe something more manageable?" There it was, Phase 2, on schedule. "I'm managing just fine," I said, my voice steady. "This is my home." Of course," she smiled, that reasonable plastic smile. "We just care about your safety. The stairs, the yard work, it's a lot for someone your age." "I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine." Vanessa let it drop, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. The seeds were planted. She'd push harder next time. After dinner, we moved to the living room. I made coffee. Vanessa excused herself. "Bathroom?" "Down the hall to the left," I said. She was gone for 10 minutes. A bathroom trip doesn't take 10 minutes. I waited another 5, then excused myself, just checking on the towels. I walked down the hall, the bathroom door was open, and the room was empty. I heard a floorboard creak upstairs. I climbed the stairs silently. I found her near the top of the landing, just outside Dennis's old office. Her hand was on the doorknob. She jumped when she saw me, a hand flying to her chest. "Oh, Carol, you startled me. I got turned around. This house has so many rooms." I stood at the top of the stairs, blocking her way. "The bathroom is downstairs," I said, my voice cold, "where it's always been." She laughed, a high, nervous sound. "Of course, silly me. Too much wine with dinner." She brushed past me, touching my arm as she went. Her skin felt like ice. I led her back downstairs and said nothing more. They left an hour later. "Take care of yourself, Carol," she said, smiling. As soon as their car turned the corner, I went to my notebook and wrote down every detail. She was testing the office door. The next morning, I called Brian. "I need to talk to you about something. Can you come by? Just you." He asked, suspicious. "What's it about?" "Your father. Something I found in his things." A long silence. "Vanessa and I don't keep secrets, Mom." "This is between you and me. Please, Brian." He sighed. "Okay, this afternoon, but I have to tell Vanessa where I'm going."
"That's fine." He arrived at 3, alone, just as he'd promised. But he looked like a man walking into an ambush. He sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, defensive before I'd even started. I put Dennis's investigation file on the table between us. "Mom, if this is about the car again, sit down, Brian, and listen." I took a breath, using my ICU nurse voice, calm, authoritative, factual. "Before your father died, he spent 18 months investigating your wife." His reaction was instant. Anger. "What? That's insane. Dad never liked her. He was paranoid. This is ridiculous. I thought so too, until I saw the evidence. I slid the folder open. I laid the photos on the table first. Vanessa, at 2 different weddings with 2 different men. That could be anyone, he snapped. Someone with the same name. Her name isn't Vanessa, I said quietly. I laid down the marriage certificates. Vanessa Cortland married Stanley Wright. Vanessa Cortland married George Murphy. Then call them, I said, pushing the paper with the phone numbers toward him. They're not random strangers, Brian. They were married to your wife before you. He stared at the numbers, his face pale. And then, I said, ask her about the $32,000 in credit card debt she opened in your name without you knowing. He stood up, kicking the chair back. I'm not doing this. This is poison, Mom. You're trying to destroy my marriage. She is destroying you, I pleaded. Look at the evidence. Dennis died trying to get this to you. I don't need to look at it. I'm not going to let you do this. He headed for the door. Brian, please. He turned, his hand on the knob, his eyes blazing. Why are you doing this? Can't you just let me be happy? My voice broke. Because your father died trying to protect you, and I'm not going to let his last months be for nothing. He slammed the door behind him. I watched him tear out of the driveway. I sank into the chair, my head in my hands. I had failed. I'd pushed him right back to her. The waiting was the worst part. I sat at the kitchen table, the file open, the silence of the house suffocating me. Hours passed. Peter called at 8. How did it go? He was angry. He left. I don't know what he'll do, Peter. Give him time. The truth has to sink in. But time was running out. At midnight, the phone rang. Brian's name on the screen. I snatched it. Brian? His voice was wrecked, raw. I called them, Mom. He was crying. I called them both. My heart broke for him. Oh, Brian. Everything, it's the same. Stanley's mother, George's father's shop. It's the exact same story. Where are you? I'm at a bar. I went home after I left your place. I was so angry at you, but I kept thinking about Dad, about those pictures. So I decided to test her. Just simple questions. What happened? I asked her where she grew up, what her maiden name was. Tell me about your family. He took a shaky breath. Her answers were different. Not just a little different, Mom. Completely different from things she told me before. Different town, different college, different everything. What did you do? I pushed. I asked her about the credit cards, the ones you mentioned, the ones in my name. Brian's voice went flat, dead. Her whole face changed, Mom. Like a mask came off. She said they were business investments that I wouldn't understand. She said I was weak, that I didn't trust my wife. She started packing a bag. No more pretending. She said I was just like the others. His voice broke. She walked out. I've been calling her phone. She won't answer. Stay there. I'm calling Peter. I hung up and dialed Peter immediately. He answered on the first ring. He knows. She ran. I'm already on it. Peter's voice was sharp. I put a trace on her credit cards and the real Linda Marsh's ID. She checked into the Airport Marriott an hour ago. She's running. And she just booked a flight. Where? Mexico City. 6 a.m. departure, one way. My stomach dropped. Can the police stop her? I've been in contact with the detectives in Arizona and Florida. With Brian's statement about the credit card fraud here, they have enough to issue a warrant for Linda Marsh. We can get her at the airport, but we have to move now. I'll pick up Brian. Meet me at your house in 20. At 3 a.m., we gathered at my kitchen table. Peter, a destroyed-looking Brian, and me. "Here's the situation," Peter said, all business. "Police are ready to move, but they need your statement, Brian, about the forged credit cards. This means it gets public. You'll have to testify. Are you ready for that?" Brian stared at the file, at his father's handwriting. He looked at me. His eyes were hollow. "What would Dad do?"
"Your father spent his last months building this case," I said, putting my hand on his. "He died before he could finish it. He would want you to stop her, not for revenge, so she doesn't do this to someone else." Brian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, let's go to the airport." We drove through the empty, dark streets. 4 a.m. The airport was just waking up, the fluorescent lights harsh and sterile. We stood behind a column near the security checkpoint. Peter positioned us where we could see, but stay back. 2 detectives in plain clothes were near the checkpoint, sipping coffee. Brian hadn't spoken, just stared ahead. 5:30 a.m. The line started to fill. And then she appeared. 2 large suitcases, a designer coat, sunglasses on despite the early hour, hair perfect. She looked like someone going on a glamorous vacation. Calm, confident, phone in one hand. She got in the security line. The detectives moved. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." Vanessa turned. For just a second, her face changed. Then she smiled. "Is there a problem, officers?" The detective showed his badge. "We have a warrant for your arrest, Linda Marsh." Her smile froze. "I don't know who that is. My name is Vanessa Bennett." "Ma'am, please step aside." Vanessa looked around, calculating. She saw the other detective blocking the exit. She ran. She dropped her luggage, kicked off her heels, and ran in her stockings across the polished floor. An airport security guard caught her before she made it 20 feet, tackled her right at the departures board. She fought, kicking, screaming, "Get off me! I haven't done anything!" People stopped, watched, phones out. The police handcuffed her right there on the floor. A detective opened her abandoned luggage right there. Stacks of cash, rubber banded. A passport with her photo, but a different name. They lifted her to her feet. She was still fighting when she saw us. Saw Brian, standing 30 feet away, me beside him. She went completely still, and then her face transformed. All the beauty, all the charm melted away, replaced by a pure, terrifying rage. "You!" she shrieked, lunging toward him. The police held her back. "You did this!" Brian flinched as if struck. "You're pathetic, weak, stupid, just like the others. You really thought someone like me would want you? You're nothing." I stepped in front of Brian. Not much, just enough. Vanessa, Linda, turned her hatred on me. "And you interfering old woman, this was mine, my score. 3 years I spent on this. You should have minded your own business and died already." The words hung in the air. People were staring, recording. I didn't react. I just stood there, my hand on Brian's arm, holding him up. The police dragged her away. She was still screaming threats, her voice fading as they took her through the security doors. Then she was gone. Brian stood frozen, shaking so hard I thought he'd collapse. "Let's go home," I said. 2 weeks later, we were at the police station. Detective Ramirez explained what they'd found. Vanessa, Linda Marsh, was wanted in 4 states. Our case, Brian's testimony, was the one that finally stuck. The money from Stanley and George was long gone, laundered through shell companies. But the charges here, fraud, identity theft, forgery, combined with the warrants from Arizona and Florida, were enough. The prosecutor expected a plea deal.
With her record, he said she's looking at 12 to 15 years in federal prison. 1 month after the airport, Brian showed up at my door with 2 suitcases. Can I stay here just for a while? Of course, I said. He took his old room, the one with his high school football trophy still on the shelf. The divorce was fast, an annulment actually. The marriage was never legally valid. Brian started therapy, twice a week. Some days he was okay. He'd make breakfast, help me in the yard, even smile. Other days he barely spoke. He'd stay in his room, the door closed, and come out only for meals. I didn't push. Years as a nurse taught me about healing. It's not linear. It's messy. It takes time. I just kept the coffee pot full and made his favorite foods, the ones he'd loved as a boy. 2 months after the airport, the prosecutor called. Linda Marsh took the plea deal. 12 years. I told Brian over dinner. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on his plate. That Saturday, I found him in the garage. He was just sitting on Dennis's old work stool, staring at the empty oil stain on the floor. He was holding the work journal. Tears were running silently down his face. I stood in the doorway, waiting. He found this on the workbench, he said, his voice thick. I started reading it. He opened to a page from years ago, Dennis's handwriting, clear and strong. Taught Brian to change the oil today. He's 12. His hands are still small, but he's careful. He listened to every word, so proud of him. Brian's hands shook, holding the page. I barely remember this, he whispered. Working on the car with him, I was so young. I sat on the workbench beside him. He loved those days. He talked about them all the time.
I sold his car, Brian's voice broke. The car he spent 20 years on. I sold it for $15,000 for a trip to impress a woman who was planning to destroy us. He wiped his eyes, but the tears kept coming. I should have known. Dad tried to warn me. Those last few months, he kept asking about her, about our plans, about money. I thought he was being controlling. He looked at me, his face crumpled in guilt. The last conversation I had with him, Mom, we argued. About her. I told him to back off, to let me live my life. His voice cracked. He died a week later. I never got to say I was sorry. My throat was tight. He knew you loved him, Brian. How could he? I chose her over him, over you, over everything he taught me. I went inside and came back with the letter Dennis had left in the car, the first one I'd read. I'd been carrying it with me, waiting for this moment. I put it in his hands. Read this. Brian unfolded it. He read Dennis's words about needing proof, about not wanting to break his son's heart, about loving him. He read the last line. Please protect our son. He's a victim in this too. He broke down completely, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. I held him. All those years of being a mother, holding my son through scraped knees and broken hearts, this one cut the deepest. We sat in the garage for a long time, surrounded by Dennis's tools, his workbench, his radio, the smell of old leather and motor oil. I wish the car was still here, he said finally, his voice raw. I'd learned everything about it, the way he wanted me to. I paid off Brian's remaining debt, the $5,000 the fraud claims didn't cover. I used the stock money. I also sent checks to Stanley Wright and George Murphy. I couldn't fix what had happened to them, but Dennis's money could give them a fresh start.
2 months later, on a Saturday morning, I heard an engine, a deep, powerful, familiar rumble. I looked out the kitchen window. The burgundy Shelby was sitting in my driveway. Tom Graves was behind the wheel. My chest went tight. I heard Brian's door open upstairs, his footsteps on the stairs. He'd heard it too. We both walked outside, standing on the front porch. Tom walked out of the car, smiling when he saw our faces. "Bringing her home," he said, "where she belongs." Brian stared at the car. He wouldn't look at Tom. He just stared at the ground by his feet, his shoulders slumped in shame. Tom walked up to us, holding out the keys. He held them out to me. "This was never mine, Mrs. Bennett. Dennis built it for you." Brian's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't understand. I stole it. I sold it to you." Tom looked at him, his eyes kind. "You were a victim, Brian. Your dad knew that. That's why he built the case, to protect you." He pressed the keys into my hand. "Dennis told me once that this car was meant for his family. He would want you to learn it." We opened the garage door together. Tom backed the Shelby into its spot. The silence settled, and then the garage smelled right again. 3 months later, on a Sunday morning, we started. Brian brought the work journal to the garage. I brought coffee. We opened the hood. "I don't know where to start," Brian said. I opened the journal. "Start with the oil," I read from Dennis's notes. "Check it first, every time. Before you drive her, know she's ready." Brian found the dipstick. His hands were steadier now. 3 months of therapy, of talking, of just being home. I saw Dennis in his movements, the careful attention, the gentle touch. By the afternoon, Brian was smiling, a real smile. "I forgot how much I loved this," he said. "Your father loved these days with you." That spring, I decided it was time. I stood in the garage with the keys. Brian came out. "You ready?" I got in. Brian in the passenger seat. I started the engine. The Shelby roared to life, a sound I could feel in my chest, the sound of Dennis's patience, his love. I backed out of the garage. I drove down Oakwood Drive, windows down, the warm air rushing in. "Dad would be losing his mind right now," Brian laughed. We drove with no destination, past the hospital, past the high school, the retirement road trip. I looked out the window, and I thought about Dennis's letter. "I'm still protecting you." He was. So, that's my story. Linda Marsh is serving 12 years. But I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think 12 years was enough for what she did? Or should the punishment for exploiting and destroying families like this be much, much harsher? Let me know in the comments.